All right, everyone, going to be getting to the week 2 core plays on DraftKings. Now, guys, last week ended up being a pretty easy week just in general with all the pricing that was out there to make this video. This week, it's a little bit more difficult with the pricing that we have out there, but all in all, it's pretty clear, I would say, which players we should be on. Let's go ahead and start out with Trevor Lawrence at the quarterback position. I think just given this game that we have, the game over and under is extremely high. Like when we pull up the game over and under, we will see 51.1 points. Like that is a lot, and it is a game that is expected to stay close. So if they're scoring that much, and if it is staying that close, I do expect Trevor Lawrence to at the very least, had this production that he had against the Colts, where it was 18.7 DraftKings points. You know, it was 2 touchdowns, 240 passing yards, a little bit rushing the football. I expect that to be his floor in this matchup against the Chiefs. Now, that being said, we did just see Detroit have a pretty good offensive game against the Chiefs as well. Trevor Lawrence and this Jaguars offense should be a little bit more high powered. At this price tag, it's like the cheapest price tag for a guy that could really break the slate. Now, that being said, I do still think the best option, the best pay down option is going to be Jordan Love. I know that matchup with Atlanta might seem like it's difficult, and it very well could be. I do think that Matt LaFleur is going to scheme plays to be there to be made for the receivers or the tight end. And so they just need to be made. And I just really like the price tag. So for me, it's either we're going with Jordan Love to save 1,200 or we're paying up for Trevor Lawrence. Let's go ahead and start it with Jordan Love there. If we need to adjust that, obviously we can. Now, getting into the running back position, there is still some news that we are waiting on. Like Austin Eckler is currently doubtful. If he sits, right, then you get Josh Kelly at a very cheap price tag. But the issue would then become the matchup with the Titans. The Titans had 19 rushing attempts against them, only giving up 50 yards. Now I would say it was more due to kind of their opponent. We'll see. And really just their weakness being in the passing game. You want to be throwing the football on them. So that being said, like Joshua Kelly could easily get involved in the passing game. This is actually going to lead, I think, more so for a receiver play that we want to be on given his price tag. And so part of the reason why I'm a little bit shy on Trevor Lawrence as a play is because I kind of just keep ending up on Travis Etienne. I was super shocked at 2 things for Etienne. One is rushing attempts and targets, 23 opportunities, guys. And if we look at his snap share from last week, it was 3rd most among running backs. Given the matchup, given the workload, it's going to be very difficult for me not to like Travis Etienne today or this week. And if we look at like defense versus position, we will see that the Chiefs, you know, they did give up 28 attempts for 116 yards. They gave up 100 yards, right? I felt like, and we all, I feel like, felt like Gibbs and also Montgomery could have been more efficient in the run game if they had chose to do so. They had a good game, though. It was very solid. We could easily see that the Chiefs were able to get the yards that they wanted, or that the Lions were able to get the yards that they wanted. Now, when we're looking at the snaps, what else kind of stood out there? James Conner, okay, guys, 83.9% snaps for the Cardinals. We also see Rashad White there, 79. That's interesting. David Montgomery, that's interesting. Jamal Williams, that's interesting as well. Mostert, interesting. Stevenson, interesting. Like, that's all noteworthy, but I want to talk about James Conner because I really love his price tag. And also, we just saw this New York Giants team really give up a lot of gaping runs. And so James Conner ended up with 12 DraftKings points last week without scoring a touchdown. That was due to him getting 5 targets for not that many points, like 5.8 points there, but was able to add 62 rushing yards. I'm not expecting him to score a touchdown, but I do think we are going to have a nice safe floor baked in there for him. His role really didn't change there. And if you've been following the Cardinals at all during like preseason and camp, they've kind of been giving James Conner a star treatment, really because that's all they got. And so I think he is still going to be a focal point. I do like the price tag. The matchup should be fine. I'm fine going in on him. And then we do have some other options here at the running back position. Do want to touch on those. Like White was some of that I mentioned, like we probably should be playing just due to his workload. I mean, he had 19 carries, had a bunch of snaps, or 19 opportunities, a bunch of snaps. The matchup on paper looks good. He just looks so bad. And that's my worry. I love the price tag. Don't love the player. Good matchup. If you can't find a reason to play James Conner, I think you probably should just be rolling with him. Kyren Williams did get the workhorse treatment, kind of for the Rams at least. You know, that price tag is certainly interesting. You know, whoever the RB1 is for that LA Rams offense is certainly someone we should be looking at. And then just lastly, I do like Zach Moss. Okay, Zach Moss is at a very cheap price tag. It was Deion Jackson kind of operating as the RB1 in this offense last week. And we actually saw that happen. I mean, 70.8 total snaps, or percent of the snaps for Deion Jackson last week. I think we can assume that that's just going to go straight to Zach Moss like it did last year. And he was very impressive last year. You know who wasn't impressive last year? The Houston Texans against running backs. And that continued again last week. Now you would say, well, that's because they got 3 rushing touchdowns. I think that that's like just how it goes. Like you can easily beat the Houston Texans just by rushing the football a bunch. And so we might see that occur for the Colts. Now that could be Anthony Richardson getting a lot of work, and I do expect that, but Zach Collins should be a nice, safe kind of 2x play. play. And as current price tag, that's tough for me not to like. Now, I do just want to point out as we flip and get into kind of the receivers, we are having a lot of great flex options right at that price tag. Like you got Josh Kelly there. You got Zay Flowers, who was the focal point of that offense. Kyron Williams is someone you could be interested in. But then we also have Marquise Brown, who kind of got his receiver number one treatment. I actually was super shocked at the amount of points he only scored. That was very shocking to me. Makes for a great lineup filler. I know that's not this video, but very interesting there. Jahan Dotson, 7 targets, 5 receptions, 9 points, like a super safe play for a cash build. I'd be perfectly fine if you guys ended up on him. Romeo Doubs, with Christian Watson most likely missing, and also with Aaron Jones most likely missing, he's someone you could be looking at. And then if we look up a little bit more at the pricing, we do have AJ Dillon. I mean, this is a lot more, but at 5.9, he is certainly someone that's going to be interesting if we get news that AJ or Aaron Jones is for sure out. It kind of seems like he's going to be out. We are still waiting on that news. Dillon has not been great. Don't get me wrong. He did not look great last week, but if he's going to be getting that full workload, he's certainly someone I will be interested in playing, especially at that price tag. I would rather, I think, play him than I would Rachaad White, but talent level, they kind of feel the same. I guess White has on paper a better matchup. But now let's go ahead and get into the receiver plays. Guys, these first 4 players, all of them I like. Okay, like literally you could play any one of those, and I feel like they are priced as they should be. Like, yes, if you had the money left over to get Diggs instead of Chase, ASB, or Lamb, do so. But from there, like, I don't feel like we need to play Adams or Wilson. I think we're starting with Calvin Ridley. And yes, we know Ridley had a huge game, and we know that Trevor Lawrence was really just getting blinders for him. We see that with 11 targets, 8 receptions. It was great. And I thought that matchup was going to be more difficult than it was going against the Colts, and he just had his way with them. Now he gets a good matchup with KC, obviously a matchup that we've been wanting to target, and for me that is something I like. We look at some of these advanced stats like catchable passes. He had 8, secured all 8. Look at red zone targets, 2 red zone targets, love that. Total targets, 11. Then we look at like something like air yards, one of the best for air yards. So like all signs point to Calvin Ridley being something that we should be going in on. Then I also really like Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen ended up with 9 targets. Only 6 of them were catchable. He did catch all those. Had 6 receptions for 76 yards. Both him and Calvin Ridley at these price tags are going to be extremely interesting. The biggest thing though with someone like Keenan Allen is going to be that matchup with the Tennessee Titans. We know that matchup was already one that was probably going to be a favorable matchup, and we saw that last week. We saw that occur last week. So Keenan Allen is someone that really should be able to go off and have a good game. We look at the receiving yards given up last week to the Tennessee Titans, 4th most. Well, I guess 2nd most because the Eagles and Vikings have already played. And that's just something we expect to continue. Then from there, it does get kind of interesting in terms of like where we want to go with our rosters, because I do really like the price tag of Deebo Samuel, and I do think he's going to be involved. He had 7 targets, 11.3 DraftKings points, just at a great price tag for you guys to feel comfortable playing him at. Zay Flowers was heavily involved in that offensive game plan. Now that could be because they just saw him more as a Mark Andrews replacement than any other player. That could be, but 10 targets, man, he looked good doing it as well. Tutu Atwell, if we get news that Puka Nacua is going to be ruled out, he is certainly someone that I think we should be looking at that price tag, which does sound a little bit weird to see, but he's going to be someone that would get a lot of receptions in the short yardage space. Now, he's not going to have this good of a game again. That's just most likely not going to happen, but I do think there's a good chance for him to 2x at this price tag. I would say Burks is going to be an interesting click. Same thing with Van Jefferson. Like if Puka Nacua is out, Van Jefferson is someone that should have scored a touchdown. The reason he didn't is because he dropped it, but he still had 5 targets. Maybe becomes a little bit more of a focal point there. Then certainly someone then you could be looking at. But really, the obvious top play here, I would say, is going to be Nico Collins. Does get a good matchup with the Colts. Had a pretty good connection there with CJ Stroud, where he had 11 targets for 6 receptions, 80 yards. You guys know I've been beating the Nico Collins drum a decent amount, and I don't get why he keeps kind of getting disrespected. It's pretty clear that he's the receiver number 1. Noah Brown is also out, which could mean that someone like Tank Dell does get elevated in terms of like priority that like we want to be on. We see Noah Brown had 67% of snaps, and then Tank Dell 50. Tank Dell's most likely going to get a little bit more snaps, but also we could just see Robert Woods, Nico Collins get more snaps as well. And I also want to point out one other thing as well. Jacoby Myers is going to be out in this game because of a concussion. I fully expect Wilkerson to be the player that's going to fill in for his role. And if it's more the role rather than Jacoby Myers, it's not. Don't get me wrong, but if he can fill in some capacity into that role, I think Wilkerson is definitely an interesting value price tag play if you guys are really trying to smash the studs into your builds. Let's go ahead and get into tight end. So tight end wise, I really do not want to pay up at tight end. Again, that's just something I typically try not to do unless we're forced into it. Okay, now that would leave us with 2 of my favorite plays at the start of the season. best ball draft wise and whatnot. Jake Ferguson, 7 targets. Didn't really add that much production. That's going to be my worry with him, but had the role that we thought he would. And then actually Luke Musgrave. He was the most, I guess, predictable player out of the Green Bay Packers when you look at snap counts, because we will see 75% of the snaps. How many times in a season are we going to get a player, a tight end, playing 75% of the snaps? Probably should have had 2 touchdowns, ended up with 0, but the offense is somewhat going to run through him a little bit. Going to have 4 targets, going to have a lot of air yards. Like, extremely interesting as a play at this price tag. And then if you're not playing him for what it's worth, guys, I do think Adam Troutman is still kind of a value price play that we can go with. With defense real quick, I do think we want to just be playing the Raiders. I mentioned I'm always just typically paying down at the defensive position. Given how bad Josh Allen looked, and I do expect him to play better, I'm just comfortable playing the Raiders. So the issue that we really have is I don't really love this price range. I do like the price tag on T. Higgins, I will say. I mean, he had 8 targets, should have had a good game. I mean, he easily could have had 2 touchdowns if it wasn't a poor weather game. And like, if we're going Jordan Love, I do like the fact that we have Luke Musgrave there, but I might end up maybe just upgrading to Trevor Lawrence, more or less just betting on that game. Then we have 5.7 left over. We could really play a bunch of quality plays still. We could go Deebo. I'd be fine with that. And for now, I have just been going White, even though I don't think he looks good. Like, if you guys didn't catch that game, but you caught the Thursday Night Football game, he looked worse, I would say, than Alexander Madison, if not very similar. And we saw the game Madison had. It wasn't good. Kind of feel like White's the same dude. That worries me. But all in all, this is a pretty darn good build. I don't know if this is the exact same one as I did on the first look build. It might be. It's solid. It is solid. I do want to give you guys just a one other slight approach, because you could easily make this build work as well. I don't like the idea really of fading Calvin Ridley, but you are able to get up to Diggs if you go with Zach Moss in the running back spot instead of Rachaad White. And then the last thing you could do as well, this is just me showing you guys how you can apply the core plays. Punt even more. Go Etienne as well. If you guys want to get CMC in there, by all means, go for it this week. I do like that price tag. Like, I'd be happy to do that, but then we can't fit Diggs in there. Then we're going with Ridley, and then we got 3K left over. Maybe Wilkerson again, honestly. If he's going to be that guy, I don't mind that. It's risky. You could do that, or you could just go down to Jordan Love at the quarterback. Flex-wise, we have 4.2 left over. And for me, I'd probably just go Tank Dell and pay up elsewhere. But let's see what we can do if we get Zach Moss in there. We have 8.4 left over. There we go. We got Diggs in there. We got Ridley in there. We got Keenan Allen in there. We got Nico Collins in there. We are getting a bunch of targets. We're getting a lot of production. This actually might be my best build of the weekend. We'll see. I like this build a decent amount, because like Zach Moss having a similar game to that of James Conner and White, like, it's not that far off. Maybe 4 points less. I don't mind this one. Now, guys, this is going to be all for this video. If you guys want access to an NFL DFS lineup optimizer for just $10 a month, click the link in the description below, 905sports.com. We have you covered. All right, thanks for watching. Let's have a good slate. And as always, let's keep cashing.